really was a game changer for me in my business, because the reality is people buy why you do things and not what you do. And it really, if you can look at the dynamics of that, and I won't go into the details, but it was spectacular and gave me a whole different perspective. So your message about what you say when somebody asks you that question, and is that message consistent? And when I say consistent, if you're a person in a company of one, certainly you're the one that controls that messaging and that brand. But what if you're a larger company? What if you have 3 or 4 people? And I mean people that are the receptionist, the people that are in your sales force, whatever other team members you may have within your organization. Do they all have a consistent understanding, and can they all convey the consistent messaging of what you're trying to drive? Nowadays, more than ever, it's so important to make sure that that message is consistent and it's compelling. So if it's just like, oh, well, we sell promo products, well, guess what? You're one in a million. You're one of a million different people that do that. So how do you really craft that story? And again, it takes time to do this, and you're not going to make sure understand it's not going to be 100% right, but you give yourself this opportunity to expand and grow and to really develop your story. What is it all about? Why do you do what you do? And what do you do? So if you can think about that as you move forward with this messaging, I think that you're going to find that it all ties together really, really strong. Now, I wanted to show you an example when we start talking about collateral material. Now, nowadays, we don't necessarily send out paper invoices and use envelopes, but in the event that you do, and it doesn't matter, everything should be consistent. Now, because otherwise, if it's not, it becomes very cloudy, and all of a sudden what will happen is that it creates this mental confusion with it for your clients. So if you look at this example, this is Rich Lucia. He is a professional speaker. And I use this because it related to a lot of the stuff that I do, but I just really like how everything that you see here, his note card, his business card, his stationery package, his book cover, his one sheet, everything that tells his story has this consistent look and feel as he starts to develop this. And so it's important. If you go to his social media pages, his website, everything has a consistent brand. When you create this consistent brand with everything that touches or reaches out to customers, what happens is it gives people a sense of confidence that you're not. Imagine if you had different logos, different colors, different fonts that you were using, that all of a sudden becomes confusing. Maybe someone's not going to say that just outright, but the reality is people are thinking it, and it's kind of like immersed into their subconscious, and that's what you want to try to do. Look, the reality is major companies, and I say this, and I've had people at seminars say to me, yeah, well, I'm not a Nike or a Microsoft, but you know what? Those companies started out small too. And so the reality is, even though you may be a $250,000 company or a $5 million company, it's really important for your brand to be consistent. The reason being, many of these companies have spent millions of dollars on establishing brand standards. I'm not saying that you should go out and do the same in terms of the dollar spent, but you certainly should have a media package that really explains what everything looks like as you move forward. As it relates to your media, we talked about this as well. Your website, it must be targeted. I want to know when I go to your website, who am I dealing with? And here's the thing. A good buddy of mine, Bobby Lehue, many of you have probably heard him speak before. I heard him at a conference once, and he said that buyers are making 70% of their buying decisions before they pick up a phone and engage with you. And the way they're doing that is through your different media channels, such as your website, your social media, the way you advertise, and things like this. So you need to look at these type of things and understand that if I go to your website, what is going to be the compelling reason that I want to pick up the phone and call you? Is it going to be relatable to me? Is it going to speak to me? Am I the target audience? If you try to be everything to everyone, my belief is you're going to have difficulty really trying to craft a strong message. My biggest recommendation to many people is that you look at how do you develop your company from a vertical market structure. Now, if you listen to my webinars in the past and the ones that we'll be doing in the future, I speak a lot about this. And now more than ever, a lot of the information that I'm pulling off of the internet has kind of validated the stuff that I've talked about now for 10 years. And that is the importance about being targeted and strategic. So if you're trying to be the one-trick pony for everyone, that's going to dilute it. I mean, think about this for a minute. The people that are out there just selling product, that's a commodity. It's all based on price. When it's all based on price, guess what? The only one that wins is the end user, because now they're in total, complete control. So again, when I talk about control, it's not one of those manipulative type things. But the thing is, I want to make sure that I'm growing my business at the level that I want to grow it. So therefore, I want to make sure that my target audience is unique and specific. And my social media has to tie into that. I have to be very mindful. And I'm going to say this, you have to be very mindful of what you're posting on social media is a direct reflection of your brand. If you're doing things that are risque and off color and things of that nature, guess what? That's a reflection of your brand. If you have people within your organization that are doing that, that's a reflection on your brand. I just had a conversation with one of my consulting clients over the weekend, and we were talking about a couple of specific salespeople that were working for them. And we were talking about how do we realign what they're doing, and and I said, are they actually are you comfortable with the way they represent your brand? And my buddy stopped and he thought a minute and he goes, yeah, I think I am. It's because he understands and he drives that whole idea of the messaging. And he is not, when I say monitoring social media, he's making sure that what they're saying on their social media accounts would not be, would be damaging to his company, his brand, and his reputation. If you stop for a minute and think about it, we associate brand with companies, but brand is you. So whether you're you own a company or not, the reality is everything that you do, the way you speak, the way you communicate, that is reflective of you, and that is reflective of your brand. So that all goes and ties into our messaging and the when we do advertisements, when we send out email blasts and things like that. Are all those messages consistent? When somebody looks at that, can they identify as soon as it pops up, whether it be the color, the fonts used, the brand, the logo, the positioning of it, where it is, do they automatically, subconsciously just record it? When you see that swoosh, you don't even have to see the word Nike. You know what it is. When you see the apple, you know exactly what the company is. That's the brand. And that speaks volumes. So when we start looking at that content, whether we're doing video, photography, all those type things, we want to make sure that it's very, very consistent. Now, one of the things that a lot of people don't take into consideration either is their skill set, the way they communicate. Are they creative? How they're presenting when they make their presentations. What is the client's perception? What are their interviewing skills in terms of how do you question? Do you question at all? Are the questions that you're asking very surface level and, excuse the expression, but lame? What's your budget? How many do you need and when do you need them? That's not good, solid questioning. So that skill set needs to be refined. And are you talking about measurability and helping your clients understand the money that they spend? How do they go about measuring the effectiveness of that? That, when you can start speaking at that level and communicating at that level, folks, things change. Things change dramatically. And it does when you're communicating. Think about this. If you send out a marketing piece, is it communicating the message of your company? Is it unique? Is it different? Is it compelling? Is it something that someone says, wow, I want to talk more to that person? Or, wow, that really blew me out of the water. I really love that. That is exciting. That's the kind of thing that you want to create, because you want to intensify that perception in the client's mind and make it meaningful. Doing so is really imperative. As it relates to communication, I'm going to throw a little sidebar in here. If you're not a member of Toastmasters, I don't get anything whether you do it or not, but I'm just telling you, it has been a dramatic measuring stick for me and has helped me dramatically. If you can join your local Toastmasters club and work on your communication skills, your one-on-one speaking, your extemporaneous speaking, things like that, it really is beneficial, and I would encourage you to do that. And it will help you at all levels that we're sharing here on this particular slide. The other thing we need to look at is your deliverables and your follow-through. If you say customer service and we're talking about customer service from the first time you pick up the phone and beyond the sale. When the sale's over, it's not over until everything is wrapped up. And guess what? Then you have to start over again. But you're only as good as your last opportunity. You're only as good as your last opportunity. So you depend on working with the best suppliers. Believe it or not, that's a reflection on your brand. If you're going after the supplier that's doing it for the best, for the best and cheapest price, guess what? That may not be reflective on your brand. You know, I remember hearing George Carlin said something in a comedy skit, and I thought it really was applicable to most businesses. He says, somewhere in the world, by process of elimination, is the world's worst doctor. And he goes, and the challenge is somebody has an appointment with them tomorrow. And if you think about it, somewhere in our business is the world's worst supplier. You work hours, sometimes days, weeks, months to secure a customer. Are you relinquishing it off to a supplier that has the same value set that you do, that has the same deliverables that you do, the same understanding, the same drive? Because think about it, if all of a sudden the supplier goes sideways on you, doesn't communicate, and all of a sudden you miss an order, does that not reflect negatively on your brand? Absolutely it does. So you need to think about that a lot. So it's not only what you're bringing to the table, but it's to follow through, and that whole communication speaks volumes about your brand. So saying customer service is number one, that's the best thing. What is your driving differentiator, and you say customer service, that's not enough. And let me share with you a really interesting statistic. 80% of big companies, and I would say even small companies, describe themselves as delivering superior service, in quotes, but only 8% of customers say they've experienced that superior service from these companies. I thought that was a very interesting statistic. So when we think that customer service, and you're only as good as your best supplier, you're only as good as your last order. So again, it's really important to understand that every dynamic that we're talking about here is reflective of your brand. So as I said earlier, you are your brand, your staff's your brand. And I just want to reiterate this. So what and how do you say, do, act, respond, and engage and deliver every single time? And making sure that you're aligning with the same type of peoples. And when I say that, I mean like suppliers, that you're aligning with the same people that have the same mindset that you do. Have you taken the time to ask any of your staff, just sit down with them and say, do me a favor, if I were to ask you, what is it that your company does? And get them to tell you. You might be very surprised. We did this activity at one of our live workshops. And it was astounding to hear some of the differences that staff's perception of what they did versus what the owner or the principal of the company was driving or leading. So again, it's important because, folks, it all matters. It all matters dramatically. You may even consider doing something on a rebrand. You know, companies do it all the time. I've done it multiple times. I've had people that I consult with that have done it a lot. I mean, I have probably had maybe 50 or 60 of the customers that I work with that have actually done rebrands like this. And one great place to look at doing this is a company called Logo Tournament. Once again, I share this information with you folks because not that I get or benefit out of it. The only thing that I get out of it is knowing that I've given you some really good information that can help you flatten the curve and maybe get some things done. So, you know, look at it. I mean, look at Apple look at the beginning, Apple company, computer company. Look at the logo to the far left. I mean, literally, that's the brand. I bet you no one knew that that was their original brand. But look at where it is today. They've made changes. And why do they make these changes? Because they need to adapt to the time. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, that Apple with the multiple colors fit the mindset of where America was. And so now you can see they've transitioned through with some slight modification, some drastic, but slight modifications to get them where they are today. I know when I had my marketing company, I literally in 12 years changed my brand probably 4 or 5 times. Maybe it was just a slight alteration, but I wanted to make sure that the message resonated with my audience in a very positive way. So back to Logo Tournament, really good option for you. To give you an example, if you put, the way it works is you put X number of dollars into an escrow account. You fill out these 3 or 4 pages about your brand, your logo, the feel and texture, the colors and things like that you like. Then you upload this, and then they send this out to designers all over the world. Now, if the more money you put in the hopper, and I think the minimum is like $250, but the more money you put in, the more responses that you're going to get. And a buddy of mine do this exact thing recently. He put in $400 into the hopper, and I think he had 120 different designs that came back. Then you have the opportunity to look at these designs and say, wow, I really like that. I don't like that. You could cull a bunch of them together in a light box, and send it out to some of your peers and people that you trust to get their feel of what they think looks good. And then once you agree on the one that you like, you can select it, and the person that actually did the drawing wins the money or wins the tournament. If you decide to back out, the last time I checked, if you didn't like anything, you could back out for $50. But again, this gives you a really good example of how you can start that process if you think you want to change your brand. And so you want to make sure that it is very reflective of your brand. And here's an example. One of the gals that I work with, when I first started talking to Linda Cedar, I asked her, look at her brand there, the IPC brand. And I said, Linda, what is that supposed to represent? Now, if you looked at that on its own, to me, that looks like something that has to do with water. Because if I'm looking at the brand by itself or the logo by itself, it has something to do with water. Now, she knew what she meant by this. She said it's like IPC, or Innovation Promotional Concepts, has ideas that spread. I said, okay, but that's not said in your tagline. So I think that you should try to look at something different. So she wanted to create something that was a little bit more reflective and more up to date. And so Logo Tournament created something that I thought was really brilliant. Very, very innovative, stylistic, great fonts. And she even took it to the next level where now you can see she does note cards and they all kind of brand together. Her website, everything, the colors all look good. So from a transition from this to this, I think is a marketable difference, and it's something that you may indeed consider as you move forward. So protecting your brand is very important, and you know, this is really what I think that people need to look at on how they help their clients do the exact same thing. I used to have a client called Litton Amicom, and they had brand standards that were so stringent. It was ridiculous. Literally, their brand guide binder was about 300 pages long, but they spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars building that brand because it's important. Now, again, I'm not saying that you spend that kind of money, but you should certainly sit down and even Google, how do I create a brand standards or brand guidelines for my company? There's hundreds and hundreds of things out there that can help you do that. But by having this strong brand, it creates strong relationships. And as I said earlier, it creates trust. Every one of you on this call, if you haven't taken PPAI's product safety course, this is a huge opportunity for you to have another arrow in your quiver or in your arsenal to be able to create that differentiator. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I had a friend of mine that actually had done some studies through this product safety, and one of his largest customers wanted him to do a specific power bank. And you know, part of your job is to protect your client's brand as well. And he actually refused to do the job because the particular power bank wasn't UL certified, et cetera. There was some hiccups and issues with that. And the customer said, I want to do them anyway. Well, he refused to do it, but he agreed to take the order on if some other person did the order, and then redo it and kit it and pack it in their kits that he was doing. When that box showed up on his desk, in his office in his warehouse, he called me up. He said, Cliff, you wouldn't believe this, but that box spontaneously combusted and exploded in my warehouse. And again, did he save this customer's brand? Well, he realized full well that he would never, ever do that again. But these are case histories that are real, that you have to be mindful of. So you want to be able to do this so that you're not only monitoring your client's brand, but you want to make sure that you monitor your brand as well. So what are some of the other things that you can look at as true differentiators? Education. I have just an example here of decorating techniques. If you can understand how decorating techniques, are you not more valuable to your customer? If you're relying on just the just the supplier to provide that, you're doing yourself a disservice. You want to understand fashion trends. You want to be able to deliver creativity, packaging, kitting, fulfillment, product safety, as we talked about. If I would encourage everybody on this call, take those courses. They are absolutely fantastic, and I promise you, it will set you above the competition that is not doing that. Give you a case in point. Any youth t-shirt that is printed must have a tracking label printed on the shirt somewhere. It can be it can be like embedded into the logo somewhere, but it has to be identifiable. That's a federal law. If that is not done and something happens, there are stiff fines that can come from that. Most screen printers don't even realize that. Most screen printers don't realize that in youth garments have that happen. So again, these are simple things that you can think about that you may not be thinking about that can really set you apart. And it does, again, affect your brand. Being able, if you're an award-winning marketer, making sure you're touting that helps the brand. We talked about brand police, and there are so many other things that are actually true differentiators that you need to consider. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of ideas where, and I'll go through these quickly, of people that I've worked with and I've helped develop these creative marketing brands for them. A good buddy of mine has a division now of his company called Easy Green Shop. And what we did is we took a spiff off of the Miracle-Gro box and we did a creative marketing piece. So when someone says, yeah, do me a favor, send me something on your company, you know, that's what most people do to get you off the phone. This is one of the pieces that he sends out. And this tells his complete story. So imagine if that wound up on someone's desk versus I'm not saying anything wrong about catalogs, but just a catalog with like a pencil in there and a note. Would that be the same, or maybe something digital that was sent over that everybody else was doing? Would this not have more impact in your mind if it showed up on someone's desk than would just something that was standard and boring? I have another good friend of mine, Cindy Gibbs. Cindy is a brilliant marketer, and we talk about branding. Her name of her company is called Big Fish Branding. And we got together and we talked about ways that she could actually push her brand out to her customers and prospects. So we decided to do something with a sushi tray, which I thought was amazing. Now, this is all promotional products, believe it or not. It looks like sushi, but there's the stuff that looks like sushi, those are actually small little mint boxes, but she's had them graphically put together. In addition to that, we put a custom label on that, and that label is reflective. It's just a spoof on the label, but it's playing off the label of what they deliver: freshness, creativity, reliability, and the 100%, 110% guarantee on each. Talks about their contact information. This is clever. This is unique. This is memorable. When this lands on somebody's desk, people take notice. It's how you instill that creativity and that brand in your customers. And again, Cindy wound up winning a first place international award through PPAI for the creativity on this piece because of the results. I think the result rates on this were like 85 or 90%, which was remarkable. And guess what, folks? Each of you have the opportunity to do that as well. One of the things that I love is there's a book out by a guy named Roger Von Oak about connecting the creative dots. And one of the things he talks about is how do you take two different objects and compare them to one another to draw a comparison. And so I looked at the idea of using a Swiss Army knife. Many of you may have seen this already because I talk about this a lot because it's a great case history. But this was targeted to 137 marketing prospects with the goal to stand out and get appointments. And as it turned out, what we did is we did a parody on a Swiss Army knife and how it related to me as a salesperson. Each of the functions of the knife related to a different function that I brought to the table as far as being a salesperson. Remarkable results, as you can see, 84% return on objective, over 100 appointments and 30 new clients. So again, I could tell you a story about where a guy called me up that saw this. It was an end user that wanted to help. This was after I got out of the business of selling. He asked me to come and do all of his marketing for his company, and he had a $1 million budget for this, and he loved this concept. So again, if your customers are not seeing this type thing, they're not going to know that you have the capacity and capability of doing it. Once again, another buddy of mine put this, and this is how this translates from what you do for yourself, and then all of a sudden, what can you do for other customers? So this one I thought was absolutely brilliant. A buddy of mine was asked to do the annual report for the Boy Scouts of America. This was many, many years ago, but they wanted to include a gift. So instead of just doing a regular manual, like an 8.5 by 11 book and slapping something in there, they used a flashlight. They had, as you can see, the little packet that goes inside the mini sleeping bag, and they tied it all together and made what it looked like a green pup tent, and everything with a custom little zipper sleeping bag. Everything nestled together and was mailed out to all the people that were getting this annual report. Now, to me, that is creativity in motion, folks. And I will tell you that I can't even say enough about that. When I saw that for the first time, I asked my buddy Paul, I said, I thought you said that you weren't creative. I said, this is absolutely stellar. This is brilliant. And again, I encourage you to look at these type of things because guess what? Every single one of you on this call, and I mean bar none, and I don't know who's necessarily on the call, but I can promise you this: every one of you have the ability to be able to do this exact thing, to do this exact creative work. And I encourage you to think about that and how you can be just such a contribution to your customers. And tell me this that would not enhance your brand in the eyes of your clients. Absolutely, it would. So here's some other things to consider. I think you need to start investing more in your branding, making sure that it's consistent. If you decide to change the name or do a rebrand, avoid difficult names. I changed the name of my company probably twice during my tenure as owning my company because it wasn't reflective at the time. You need to be involved in this. Have a brand message or a clever tagline. And we all know the one, just do it. I mean, that is just a brilliant example of a branded tagline or message that just resonates, okay? Make sure that you create a memorable campaign, something that when someone says, yeah, send me something on your company, that it's reflective and it resonates throughout your entire messaging by creating that emotional connection with the company. So, look at ways to get creative, whether it be in packaging, your marketing, etc. Be present, stay connected, stay engaged with your customer, and offer a unique value that no one else is given. And look, this is not something is it difficult at the front end? Yeah, a little bit, I would say it is. But the reality is it's imperative that you do it. Now that everybody and their brother seems to be getting into this business, how do you set yourself apart? How, when people look at you, are they sitting there going, wow, this is a company that I want to do business with. This is a company, I think even more so, this is a company that I'm willing to write a check to. And I also want to share with you just this final thought, somewhat final thought. if this is your story, your company, your brand, it's your story. Tell it the way you want it to be told. Because if you don't tell it the way you want it to be told, you're leaving it up to customers and prospects to tell your story. You need to make sure that your story is consistent and it's engaging. So my final thoughts, and this goes to something I'm going to offer for the first 5 people that send me an email. Happy to do it. Print out everything and take screenshots. Look at your collateral material. Look at all your branding, your logo, the last 2 or 3 marketing campaigns you've sent out if you have. Look at everything. Review and look for inconsistencies in the look, the balance, the tone. What are you trying to convey? The color, all of that. What is the value proposition? How does it tie to your brand? And then if you find those things, take the time to revamp it. Revamp for your inconsistencies as you see fit. So with that said, I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. I want to thank Dash. They are a great sponsor of these webinars and helping me put these together. We have a few more upcoming webinars that are coming up, so I'd like you to mark your calendars. January 5th, we're doing 7 marketing fails and how to prevent them. On January 19th, I'm very excited about this because when we will be sending out a survey that says, what did you think of this webinar? Give us your thoughts. We want to know candidly what you think, number one. And we also want to know what other topics would you like us to talk about? Now, one of the things that came from the last webinar we did was, what's my business worth? Well, it just so happens that I have a very good friend of mine. His name is Rob Nickey, president of a company called CEO Consulting. And he is going to be our special guest, and we're going to talk about that exact thing. What's your business worth? How to position it to grow it to a point where you can actually sell it, and really defining what it looks like in order to do those type of things. And then also on February 2nd, we're going to be doing one called Accountability Starts With You. And I think that you're going to find it's going to be very, very exciting. So with that said, and before we get into questions, once again, I want to say thank you. This is my contact information on the screen. Please contact me if you're interested in getting our blog called 30 Seconds to Greatness. And we will be releasing a podcast in the next few months called 30 Seconds to Greatness as well. But it's all about small business entrepreneurship and growth and things of that nature. But once again, my special offer for the first 5 people that respond to my email and just say, Cliff, I'm interested in having you look at my brand and whatnot. I'm happy to do it free of charge for the first 5 people that do that. And then we can talk about what steps we need to take next. So that said, I'm going to turn this back over to Peter and answer any questions that may have arisen during the presentation. So Pete?
Cliff, first and foremost, thank you so much for another great presentation. We do have a couple of questions here. The first question coming in, what metric do you use to measure goodwill?
That's a good question. Goodwill, I just recently did a marketing campaign that was all about goodwill, and you have to create I guess the measuring stick for that. So what we had done is we asked people that once you it was basically a puzzle that we did that they had to put together, but I don't want to get into the details. But once you put the puzzle together, I'm sure you're going to be excited about it. Do us a favor, take a picture of it and give us a comment that hopefully we can post on our social media. Well, we sent out probably 200 of those and wound up getting 130 responses. Well, number one, I think that response was good, but it was the things that the folks said and the smiles on their face when they were holding up the puzzle when it was completed. I guess that would be the barometer that I use for that particular piece. But goodwill is really hard to measure. So you're going to have some type of, like I said, some type of measuring stick there or call to action that you can actually measure against. That would be my best suggestion.
Great. And then what resources do you recommend or are your favorites to help one think more creatively and add more value to their customers?
Well, that's great. You know, there's a great book by Roger Von Oak called A Whack on the Side of the Head. First of all, I would encourage you to read that. He's got two, actually, that one and one called A Kick in the Seat of the Pants. But they're all about innovation and creativity. So I believe I love that. When I'm starting to design marketing for myself, one of the things that I do to spark that creativity is, well, first of all, I keep a journal. I actually designed a journal that I sell on my website, but that journal is all about archiving concepts and ideas as they come to mind. You don't have to have anything as elaborate as that. You can get yourself a spiral bound book or journal, and just only thing that you put in there is creative ideas. No other notes, no other, I got to go to the grocery store. Everything in that book is just designed for creative. I keep my journal on my desk, and as ideas pop into my head, or I might see an ad or something that sparks an idea, I'll just jot it down in the book so that I have a reference when I go back to it. But one of the other things that I use a lot, and that is Pinterest. So I'll go to Pinterest and I'll put in there creative packaging ideas. And then all of a sudden I'll hit the button, and the plethora of information that comes up is outstanding. Now, I may not be able to use those exact things, but it really does help jumpstart my innovation and my creativity. And I think the one thing for people to keep in mind, as you're doing this, the more you do this, because sometimes I'll just go to Pinterest for no other reason, just to open up my brain a little bit. So for me, I just do it and just take notes, but I journalize like an idiot. I'm just journalizing everything that I can, concepts, ideas. And the more you do that, you then start to build that learned behavior in your head, because I think once you embrace it and put it in your head and you write it down, it sticks with you more and more. So I started developing my creativity the way I have by doing just that. And so if someone on this call called me up and said, "Hey, Cliff, I need a product that I can give away at a trade show," or I would not be the one to help you do that, because I don't think like that anymore. The way I think is constantly, how do I build something more creative around? If a customer wants to give away something, my first question is why? What's the purpose? And so when I can start asking myself those questions, and then I can dig down and look at these different opportunities that are present out there. And I've just shared a couple with you. You could go to the web and you could find thousands of resources that can help you do just like that, just that. But those are the things that I do to move the needle forward.
Wonderful. And the questions actually keep pouring in here. So hopefully you have a few more minutes to answer. Perfect. How do I, and this is coming from someone else in the audience here, how do I, as a single person, stay on top of all the industry education and trends, as well as being active on social media?
That's a good point. Again, I don't know. This really does goes to your bandwidth. First of all, whoever asked the question and the other large group of people that are on this call right now, I say kudos to you for taking time to do something good for your business. A lot of people don't think that they need that. As a speaker, I'm always doing these things. I'm always on webinars. I'm always listening and educating myself. And I too have limited bandwidth. So what do? I just make certain things a priority. There may be certain things that are of interest to me that I want to learn about. So I carve out. First of all, I have a very rigorous schedule of what I do. I think I said this in my last webinar. This is going to sound, and please, before you judge me, hear me out. I have a philosophy that I come first, my kids and wife come second, and my friends come third, and my job comes last. So for me, I have to be whole 100%, spiritually, physically, mentally, so that everybody that depends on me benefits. And that's not an egotistical thing. That means I realize that I have to be on my game, because there's people that depend on me. My wife and my kids depend on me. My friends depend on me at some level, and my clients depend on me. So when I get in that mode that my clients depend on me, I want to know, what is it that I need to know that I can help? The things that you're learning here, these small little nuggets that you're learning here, are things that can help your customer. So if you have minimal bandwidth, then you're just going to have to make sure if you need to ask yourself the question, do I have struggles with time management? If you do, you need to work on that. If you don't have time management struggles, then you just have to be selective in what you can and what you can't do. That would be my greatest advice when it comes to things like that. Look, I share with you right now 40 years of experience. If you'd like to get on a webinar that would take about 35 hours or longer, I could share with you all the mistakes I made in those 35 years, those 40 years. But the thing is, I've learned that I have to be very selective, but I have to do these things because there was a point in time in my career that I didn't think that I needed education, that I didn't think that that was important, but I was sorely wrong. So again, finding the things that are most important, understanding what your clients are looking for, and I'll give you a great example of that. Right now, we know, based in this pandemic situation, the dynamics of going back to work may not come as fast as people may think. So the reality is, if we know what are the things that people are challenged with now out there, one of them is, how do I stay connected with my staff when they're working remotely? How do I stay connected with my clients when they're working remotely? How about you just Google that and look at that type of information? See what education is out there. PPAI, ASI are jacked full of education. I mean, ridiculous amount of education. If you belong to a regional association like I do, there's webinars like 2 or 3 a week that are out there. You don't have to do them all, folks. You don't have to do them all, but be selective. But my recommendation would be do something. Do something is better than just sitting idle and doing nothing. So I know that was a long way around the barn to get to the answer, but that would be my recommendation.
Wonderful. Speaking of recommendations, with so many decision makers working from home today because of COVID, how do you suggest executing a mail campaign? Do you still send to the office, or do you have any other tips?
My recommendation would be, first of all, call. And you need to, because there are people, they haven't left their offices completely. So my point is, there may be if you have an email address, the best thing to do, I would recommend to say, like, if you're going to do a marketing campaign, like I showed you some of those examples, I would email your client and say, I have something I would like to send to you. Do you have the best address do you have an address that you could provide to me where I know that you would get this? Don't say your home address. Let them be the ones that tell you, where they want it sent. But then again, make sure that you have a strategy and a follow-up with this. Just sending that's not good enough. But we're all faced with that.